Peace and blessings, fellow seekers. This is Duality Huntress. In this video, I want to briefly talk about how I get through Mercury retrograde. So, three, I guess you could call them strategies or things that I typically do during Mercury retrograde times. The first thing I would say I do is I do a lot of preventative care. Like, for example, this past Mercury retrograde, I had a free day from work, so I decided to take my car to the mechanic just to get it checked out. I was hearing kind of like what sounded like a funny noise, but the morning of the appointment, I went to turn my car over, and I didn't hear the noise anymore, but something in my gut was telling me go to the mechanic anyway, and thankfully I did, because the mechanic found that my battery was low on power, and also there was a belt that had become cracked that was in danger of popping potentially. So thankfully, and I went ahead and got those fixed. Thankfully I did, because if I hadn't and I had let those things go, then I might have gotten stranded, because I rely on my car pretty heavily. So that's one thing I would say. Like, if your gut's telling you there's some mechanical issue that could potentially come up, maybe it's a good idea to get that checked out if you can. Another thing I tend to focus on during Mercury retrogrades is letting go of things I don't need or reorganizing the things that I currently have. I didn't really let go of too much of my stuff. I did go through like a little bit of my paperwork and threw away some things, some papers that I no longer needed. But mostly I just reorganized my stuff, especially like my art supplies. So before, I had like paints in a small bag, and I had like brushes in a small box, and just different art supplies kind of scattered in different things. So I basically got all my painting supplies kind of like in one bin. So if I need to paint something, it's all in one thing. I can just pull it out and get to work. So that's one thing I would say is definitely a good idea during Mercury retrograde, especially. So the third thing I tend to focus on during Mercury retrograde is to take more of an effort when I'm communicating with people. Not all communication issues are necessarily going to be my fault, but if I would say communication is a two-way street, and it's better to take responsibility for my part of a conversation. So one thing I do is I practice active listening. If someone says something that I'm not entirely sure on, I'll rephrase what they said and ask, is that what you meant? And that's one way to kind of like ensure that there's clarity, at least that I'm accurately receiving what they're trying to tell me. Another thing I do is when I type emails or texts, I take an extra minute or two to reread the messages and ensure that the message makes sense, is grammatically correct, that there's nothing that can be taken a different way. And that, I would say, has saved me some grief. So those are my strategies, things that I do to kind of help me get through Mercury retrograde. I would say also, just in general, just kind of follow your gut. It's definitely a good idea. So that's all I have for now. More videos to come soon. Bye.